I'm Richard.
And I'm Will.
And together we're
The Irreverent Nerds. Bum, bum, bum.
Nerds! For those of you who are not yet aware, we are currently offering a monthly subscription service for our listeners for the low price of $2.99 per month. I mean, that's like the price of what? A 12-ounce drip coffee at Starbucks or half of a Starbucks latte? For $2.99 a month, subscribers will gain access to 2 brand new bonus episodes dropping on the first and third Fridays of each month, plus our entire back catalog of bonus episodes. And that ranges from our most recent film review of the 2023 movie Flash, going all the way back to another movie, our very first bonus episode, which not coincidentally is connected to Flash, and that is Tim Burton's 1989 film Batman. And there's a lot in between that you're going to miss out on if you don't subscribe. So hey, click on the link in the description today to get started. Nerds, thank you so much. Now back to today's episode. Nerds. Nerdettes. Nerd persons. Assorted nerd humanoids. Because you never know who might be listening to this either now or a billion years from now. These do podcasts send waves? I guess they come over the cellular waves, which might travel out into space and at some point be detected by an alien civilization. I don't know. What do you think, Will?
Remember, we were good to you before you probed us.
and vivisected our cows. Damn it. Vivisect our cows. Only we can do that. Oh man. You know, actually, speaking of aliens, I saw this, and there was a reputable news site. I want to say it was, I'm trying to remember the specific site, but it was one that was like, oh, this is a little more serious. And as well as the source. But apparently a Harvard professor believes he may have found evidence of alien technology from a meteorite that crashed in the ocean recently. And
yeah, I read that article.
Did you see that? Yeah, these tiny little, like almost perfectly spherical objects. They're almost uniform in size, and they were, I don't know if it was an alloy, but it was made of a mixture of minerals, iron being the most prominent. Sorry for the noise. My daughter's playing around the desk here.
Oh, I don't even hear it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. I was like, Yeah, and there's no telling how far it traveled. Like they were speculating maybe it was something similar to the Voyager spacecraft that we sent out, but that it hit something or disintegrated in the atmosphere or broke up prior to entering the atmosphere. Either way, there's not enough at this point for us. Well, at least that they have told us about detect any kind of message or anything. Are you familiar with what was placed on the Voyager spacecraft?
No, I'm not. I'm assuming from what you're talking, it was a time capsule.
Of a sort. Like it was, I think the project was headed up by Carl Sagan actually, and I think his wife, or well, I don't know if she was his wife at the time, but actually I think that might have been part of how they got to know one another. Now that I think about it, but the woman who eventually became his wife was also involved, and I believe they were married at the time. So I've heard her talk about this on the podcast Radio Lab, actually, which shout out, excellent podcast, by the way. But they made a gold record, basically something that it would take. I forget what they said the half-life was on the thing, but it would take, I want to say close to 1 million years for it to degrade enough to where it couldn't be read anymore. But it was a golden record because this was back like in the 70s, I think. And
Wow.
And it had just various information on it. Like I think it had some classical music on it. I want to say it had some speeches on it, and maybe some readings of literature. And it also had the heartbeat of the Sagan's, I believe, their daughter, like her fetal heartbeat that they had recorded, and yeah, that was pretty cool. That was kind of a little personal touch that they put on there. But yeah, it was just basically a message from Earth that, you know, obviously they'd have to figure out how to read the thing, you know, like I think there was some mathematical formulas in there too, maybe. And yeah, it's pretty cool to think that now once it travels like 1 million light years, you know, if the universe still exists at that point, you know, we might all be dead. You know, all us humans might be gone. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out.
Well, then we'll have that one golden record. Yep.
Should have made it.
We existed.
Be like, it was like, damn, should have made it platinum.
Yeah.
Anyway, to the topic at hand, Mr. Will Tomboy. There we go. That's your nickname, Will Tomboy. Would you like to introduce our topics for today?
Well, today is comics and manga. That's our topic. And more specifically, we both got Shonen Jump subscriptions. And Richard's been reading through some old Alien comics. So,
not on Shonen Jump.
not on Shonen Jump,
mm-hmm.
but separate from Shonen Jump. So we're here just to talk about what we've been enjoying lately. We've been both reading some My Hero Academia, as well as other things that Shonen Jump offers.
Yeah, like I haven't gotten around to anything else on Shonen Jump yet. I just for this episode actually finally got the subscription, or the free trial, I guess, which I do plan to maintain the subscription. It's a really good deal. $2.99 a month. You know, I know you don't get access to the full backlog like you do with Marvel or DC, but for that price, I mean, you know, then you get like what the most recent, you know, depending on the property, I guess the most recent like 6 or 7 issues for free of most of the comics, right? And then maybe some back volumes as well.
I think what it is that you can read up to 100 chapters per day. And unless you're just voracious, I don't see myself or you reading more than 100 chapters in one day.
Yeah, no, I don't have the time for that typically. Like, although occasionally I make the time for if there's a novel that just like, well, no, it still wouldn't be 100 chapters though of anything, unless they're just like 3 pages or something. 3-page chapters.
I think that if you're not a subscriber, you get to read the first chapter or 2 for free. Then you get to read the last 3 chapters, the most recent chapters for free. But everything in between in every series, you got to pay for. If you look at that little padlock, you'll see once you have a subscription, the padlock is open. So
okay. Maybe it isn't completely open on mine yet since I have the free trial. That might be.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Not sure. I guess I'll find out in a week or so if it renews up for the full trial. But yeah, so I read the first 2. I guess the first chapter of Volume 1 of My Hero Academia, which is basically the preview. Which also covers the equivalent of the first 2 episodes of the anime, which I also watched today. And Will, you read, I think some of Volume 1 as well, and you said you also read a more recent or a different My Hero Academia. Did I understand that correctly?
Right, it's the Team Up series. It's kind of like side stories that they didn't have time for in the main series because it would have slowed the plot down too much.
Okay. So which do you want to talk about first, the Volume 1 or the other?
Now let's go ahead and talk about the main series.
Okay.
Volume 1.
So how I think you said you had access to a physical copy. How far did you get into Volume 1?
Well, a physical copy came in at my day job, but I was keeping it at one work site, but I got orders to go help out at a different work site, so I didn't really read the physical copy. I just jumped on the Shonen Jump app. They're not paying me. I really like it, to be honest. I didn't think I'd be using it that much, but I read a lot of manga in the last 2 or 3 days since I subscribed. But so on the Shonen Jump app, I got through the first chapter of My Hero Academia, and I
Izuku Midoriya Origin, right? First chapter.
right, and the art's really good. There was some, at least one joke that does not appear in the anime. I think I noticed. I don't know if you noticed or not, but in one panel of the manga, there's a silhouette of Spider-Man and Superman.
Really? I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Very early on, when it talks about fictional superheroes, and how the new job of hero has come front.
I caught Spider-Man. Oh, and there's Moon Knight as well, and Ultraman.
Yeah, Moon Knight.
And but I didn't notice the Superman for whatever reason.
Ultraman.
Oh, I see Spawn there. Is that Spawn?
Is that Spawn?
It's either Spawn or maybe the villain from Spider-Man, like the one from Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, I don't know.
Not quite sure, because Spawn is kind of like an anti-hero, right?
Yeah, I would assume it's more likely to be Spawn than Prowler.
Yeah, I would think so. That's kind of the theme, is like well-known comic book heroes / anti-heroes, I guess. Yeah, I thought that was cool, like reference to some both DC and Marvel and I don't know who produces Ultraman.
Japanese.
Well, yeah, Japanese, but like I meant more like the studio or the publication or publisher. That I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. I just noticed it was Western and Eastern heroes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I have to say, like, now I did. I think I started the manga. I read the first couple of pages, but then earlier today I was like busy doing other things, like cooking food for my kids and trying to do dishes and stuff. So I turned on the anime, which I also have actually it might have renewed for a subscription, but I had a free trial to Crunchyroll, and so I watched the first 2 episodes while I was doing other things. This time with the English dub, because like if I'm having to focus on some other things at the same time, I can't really do the Japanese. Like I have to stay there and read it, otherwise I lose everything. Obviously, don't speak Japanese. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I see why it hooked both you and Dan. Like I could see that. I really like the themes that it introduces. Yeah, the idea that anyone can be a hero, whether you have superpowers or not, that it's courage and the willingness to risk your own life for the sake of protecting others that is the mark of a true hero. I thought that was really cool. Now you said, this was your first time reading any of the manga. Prior to that, you've seen most, if not all, of the series.
Yeah, I think I've watched the first 5 seasons of the anime, and because of that, I couldn't really get into the manga because I already knew what was going to happen, and that's why I switched over to the Team Up Missions comic.
Yeah, that makes more sense. You know, unless you were going to read like the newest chapters of the manga, which I'm assuming are ahead of the anime series. I mean, one would think.
Yeah, one would think. I'm not sure. Sometimes animes will catch up to the manga and they have to do fillers, or they just completely go in their own direction separate from the manga. And I'm not sure what is going on with My Hero Academia. I mean, the writing is so good that I'd like to think that they couldn't do it without the manga.
Yeah, and really, I noticed at least definitely with the first 2 episodes of the anime, and then going back and behind it and reading the manga, like it's almost word for word, like panel for panel in a sense, like panel to scene correspondence with a little bit of extra, a little bit tweaking, a little bit of extra dialogue added into the and action, of course, into the anime. But yeah, it follows it very closely. Yeah, I wish a lot of other adaptations would follow the original properties that closely, where possible. Of course, it's not always possible in a visual medium to do that.
Right.
Just one thought that comes to mind is the Twilight series. Like, if you were to, I'm not recommending the Twilight series, not a big fan of it, but if they, because it was the books, same with
You
Hunger.
don't like sparkly vampires?
It's not. I don't have anything against vampires. Just have things against bad writing and bad acting. And no, I have not read the books, so I'm not necessarily maligning Stephanie Meyer. I have not read the books, but the movies are just, they're just bad. Which Robert Pattinson would agree with me. And I know he wishes he, in general, wishes he hadn't done. Well, actually, I think he's changed his tone a bit over the years. He's grateful for some of the opportunities that it has afforded him, I think. But yeah, he's fortunate that he was able to break out of typecasting after that. Anyway, but just both of those, like Hunger Games and Twilight, as I understand it, the books were in first person, which you know, if you try to do that where there's like narration every time the character's thinking something from the book, you do the narration in the movie, it typically does not work well. You can throw it in every now and then, but if you try to do it as often as is in the book, yeah, not going to work. So there's like some dramatic license that has to be taken. But when that's not necessary and the original is like extremely popular or just very loved by the fans and the adaptation sticks closely, I like that. I like that. Although it does, if you've seen the movie first, it would make, as it did a little bit for me, even reading and watching them the same day, like I had to deliberately engage myself. I was like, wow, I just saw this.
Yeah.
And it obviously is a little more interesting because it's in color and it's animated. And but no, like the I wonder, like, would you say that a lot of mangas are made almost with the intent or the hope of it being adapted? Like they're almost designed that way.
Well, my understanding mostly comes from the anime series Bakuman.
Okay.
And in that series, it's explained that, the hope is that it will be adapted to anime. That's a sign of success, apparently.
Makes sense. Like I've heard. Well, I know Dan Johnson kind of decries this, at least on the American side, but that a lot of, in his opinion, like a lot of Marvel and DC writers now are just writing so that they can get a screenplay writing job later. And so they're not putting as much loving care into the comic book writing, according to Dan, which I can see why he thinks that. Like, I'm not, like, recent Marvel in particular, the little bit that I have read, it's a mixed bag at best. I think I've read non-mainstream Marvel DC stuff, like even like DC Black Label, that's so much better written, and more interesting. And some of that may be superhero fatigue. Like they've been putting these stories out for 60 years in the case of Marvel and 80 years in the case of DC.
Yeah.
You eventually run out of stuff to do, I guess, or you just rehash the same things over and over again.
Who knows? Maybe superhero genre will die off for a while, then come back again, like it did in the 60s.
Yeah, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Like they definitely need to make some changes. They need to tweak some things. So did you? I don't want to dominate the conversation. Did you have more thoughts on Volume 1 and just on My Hero Academia in general, or just on the side? How about the The other property that you read was a crossover, you said, between Marvel
Yeah.
and My Hero?
Oh, I didn't get that far. The team up missions, My Hero Academia team up missions. It's really good. It's about teaming up the student main characters with various pro heroes that exist in that world. Just going on little side missions. Some of them are action packed. Some of them are detective. Like there's this one where this little girl is saved during a riot, and she asks one of the hero agencies where Fat Gum is the main hero, the pro hero. Now Fat Gum is he's a really good looking guy, but he has to eat all this food to make himself really fat because his superpowers come from using his fat to shield people and be a tank or whatever. So, like, once he uses up all that fat, he'll go back to his normal shape and size. So the entire story, this little girl has hired the agency to find this person who saved her during the riot, and all she knows is the person is blonde. It's not till the end of the story that one of the student heroes assisting Fat Gum finally realizes that it's Fat Gum she's been looking for the entire time. It's just that Fat Gum is so fat she doesn't recognize him. So they get into a fight, and he tells Fat Gum to absorb all the hits from the enemies coming in until he gets skinny again. So that was pretty fun and pretty funny. But like I said, there's some action-packed ones like Deku, that is Midoriya, and Bakugo, I think is his name, are helping the winged pro hero. I don't remember his name, but he has bird wings. Are helping him take down what is basically the combination of the Flash and Spider-Man combined. He can use webbing and runs at the speed of light at the same time. So that was pretty action-packed. Those are just examples of some of the stories you'll read in the team-up missions. Later on in the series, and I believe I talked about this in a Japan jaunt, later on in this series, All Might actually teams up with Deadpool from Marvel. Which is pretty interesting. I mean, I think if that's not this series, maybe that's a different series. I just thought it was this series. That could have been actually the Deadpool manga. My bad. Maybe All Might appears in the Deadpool manga. Maybe that's what that is. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay, man.
But that's all for my thoughts on My Hero Academia.
Okay.
Except that I look forward to reading the Vigilantes title later.
So you mentioned that you read a few other things. This is kind of a smorgasbord. Like we were just talking about comic books we've been reading recently. You mentioned some Astro Boy as well that you read.
Oh no, it was Astra Lost in Space.
Very different.
Yeah, I read it. It was pretty high alphabetically in the Shonen Jump backlog, so I found it pretty quickly. And it's one of the rare Shonen Jump titles that actually stars a girl instead of a male lead, and she looked cute, so I gave it a read. It was pretty good. For subscribers, Richard's turned into a chameleon for a second there.
Sorry, I was trying to trying to put some filters on or figure out how to blur my background, which I cannot seem to figure out at the moment. Anyway,
yeah, Astra. I'm not sure why it's called Astra. The main character's name is not Astra. It's something else I can't remember right now. I only read the first chapter. It's about a group of teenagers who goes to another planet as a part of a high school camping trip. This takes place in like the far future when space travel is commonplace. So the bus drops them off. The space bus, high school space bus, drops them off on this other planet to go camping. It's only 4 hours away by light year travel, but a science fiction anomaly transports them through space and possibly time to some other planet 50-some thousand light years away, where they find an abandoned spaceship, and now they're just trying to survive with the knowledge that the school will never find them because they don't know where they are. So that's where chapter 1 ends. There's a little bit of the main character seems to be this girl and boy, and they've got this cute you already are rooting for them to get together, and the main female lead is kind of cute and ditzy, charming in her own way. The male lead wants to be like class president or something, leader of the camping trip. And then I also read That Time I Got Reincarnated as Yamcha from Dragon Ball. And that was interesting. We got to see what a Japanese schoolboy geek who has infinite knowledge of Dragon Ball, what happens when he falls down some stairs trying to go after a cute girl, hits his head, and then dies. And then wakes up in the world of Dragon Ball as Yamcha.
Wow, what a way to go out.
Yeah. And since he's now Yamcha and he knows how Yamcha's entire life is going to play out before he dies, and the fact he's not going to get to be with Bulma because Bulma's going to fall for Vegeta, basically he spends his life as Yamcha doing the opposite of what Yamcha actually did in the comics, training himself to get stronger so he can actually not die. And the character's motives are selfish at first, but he eventually allows the course of Dragon Ball history to play out, although slightly differently, since his character doesn't die. And he finds out that one of the other characters was reincarnated from a Japanese schoolboy too, and they fight, they make up, and then we find out that the Dragon Ball Z gods have
Joker here. I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about the Irreverent Nerds. They're sitting here in my hideout, all tied up. So they can't say this themselves, but they would like you to know that there are multiple options by which you can connect with them. Their Instagram handle is @irreverent_nerds. They're on Facebook and YouTube as simply the Irreverent Nerds. So pedantic. And of course, they are on your podcast app. If you listen on Spotify, scroll down and you will see a question. What did you think of this episode? They welcome your feedback, or so they told me. They also post episode-specific polls and questions from time to time, so please feel free to jump in and give them your 2 cents while they're still alive. All right, nerds, I've talked enough. Let's get back to this week's episode. It might be their last. We're back, nerds. Sorry for the unceremonious cutoff in the previous break. We weren't paying attention to our time limit on Zoom and got cut off, which we never have gone professional with Zoom. It's a little on the pricey side for like just a small podcast, to go professional. It's designed more for businesses and the like, not really for podcasters. So they don't have a pricing option that reflects that, unfortunately. So we may switch over to another service at some point, but for now, it works well enough for us, for our purposes. Anyway, so before we were so unceremoniously interrupted, Will, you were talking about a Dragon Ball Z parody of sorts that you were reading.
Yeah, it's a parody of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, which we previously covered on our podcast. This parody is done by Akira Toriyama, called That Time I Was Reincarnated as Yamcha. Now,
who remind me, like in the Dragon Ball series, who is Yamcha and what's his significance? Or is it her? Is it her?
No, it's a he. He was a desert bandit who became one of the friends of Goku and Bulma and the rest of the group early on in the very first story arc of Dragon Ball. And he remains one of the main cast members up until Dragon Ball Z, in which he dies at the hands of Vegeta and Nappa's Sabermen, or whatever they're called. These little green aliens that grow from seeds. As I was saying, in this version of the story, since this Japanese schoolboy who is a Dragon Ball fanboy got reincarnated as Yamcha, he knows his fate is he's going to die. So he's changing Yamcha's
again.
Story. Yeah, he's changing Yamcha's story, trying to train with Goku to get stronger, so that he won't die, and he succeeds. He doesn't get the girl. He allows the rest of Dragon Ball history to play out as it goes. But he finds out that another Japanese schoolboy got reincarnated as a separate character, Chaozu. And he fights Chaozu, who is just the schoolboy reincarnated as Chaozu has decided, instead of being a good guy, to try to take over the Dragon Ball planet. And they fight, but they make up and become friends. And as I was saying before we got cut off earlier, the gods, Lord Beerus and his brother, turns out that they were playing a game of reincarnation to see whose champion would win over the other. It's a short little funny story that explores a what if kind of scenario in Dragon Ball history. And that's it. So you've been reading some alien comics, right?
Yeah. So, mom to the rescue. Yeah. So, subscribers who might be listening to the audio, apologies. We probably won't use the video on this particular one's. We're trying not to put our kids. Like if I'm just holding a sleeping kid is one thing, but so yeah, apologies that you're stuck with just the audio like everybody else. But thanks again for subscribing, and there will be another bonus episode coming up. Let's see here, Friday the what day? 21st, Friday the 21st. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, getting back to Aliens comics. So I've picked up. I love my central library, like here in Winston-Salem. I take my daughters there a lot because it's air conditioned for one. It's especially nice in the summer, and obviously it's free. They have a really nice kids area, but on the way to the kids area, they have a display where there's a curated selection of graphic novels, and it's a really good selection. Like whoever makes those choices for the library does a good job. And so I'll check it out once or twice a month, usually. And sometimes once a week, I'll check it and just see if there's anything of interest. And this particular time, one of the featured items they had was this. So it is an Aliens anthology, The Essential Comics Volume 1. It is an assortment of some of the best alien stories from over 3 decades of Dark Horse Comics. Now, that's the series, but this particular volume covers comics that were made between the Aliens James Cameron film and the infamous Alien 3 made by David Fincher, although it's not, I don't know which is more infamous, Alien 3 or Alien 4. But they both are infamous for different reasons, I suppose. But in between, apparently, these comics kept the story going, and so they pick up, at least the ones I've read so far, pick up where Aliens left off, and it's really good. I'm enjoying it. Like Aliens comics, in my experience, I've read a few off and on over the last year or two, and they're kind of hit or miss as to whether they're interesting or not. I mean, all of them expanding on the world on some level, but these are more interesting, I think, in part because I know some backstory about Alien 3 and what it might have been or could have been, and some of the storylines. For instance, the issue I'm currently reading. Let's see what the title is here. Oh wow! So actually, it's all the same thing still. So the first one is called Outbreak. The first series is called Outbreak. So I'm still reading through it. It's quite lengthy. But it takes place, it looks like maybe 12 to 13 years after the events of Aliens, like the end of the film Aliens. And in this issue, now I haven't found out what happens to Ripley yet. They don't say whether she died. Something happened to her, and for some reason she's not in the story thus far. I don't know yet if that's that she died. Maybe that happened in a previous comic that's not included in this collection. I'm not entirely sure. They reference that something happened to her, and either she's not on Earth or she's not in touch with Hicks and Newt. But Hicks and Newt are still alive, which they were at the end of the Aliens movie. And Newt, understandably so, at least in this comic book series, has some pretty significant psychological issues. And she's also an orphan, so she has been placed in some form of like orphanage / asylum, kind of, or what they would call now behavioral health center, so I don't know, but it's more of a prison. Like this was involuntary for her. Now she does occasionally get violent. She'll have these episodes that are often preceded by like very violent dreams. Again, understandably so. Like she has PTSD from her experiences there on Archeron with the aliens and seeing her. In this, like, and I'm trying to remember how it goes down in the film itself, but in this, like, as it does like a recap of sorts, she sees her on video. Her and her brother see their parents. Well, they see I don't know if they see the aliens burst out. They must have seen that at some point and realized their parents were dead. But the egg, opens up and the face hugger, attaches to both their parents, and they see that happen, which obviously is traumatizing. And her brother, which I don't think they show it happening in the film, but her brother dies, and so he's killed at some point as well. Anyway, so she has these horrible dreams, occasionally acts out violently. So she's been like incarcerated more or less for quite some time, and they don't say exactly how old she is, but just gathering clues from the storyline, she seems to be about 18 or 19 thereabouts, kind of in that range, like late teens, I think. And she has had some contact with Corporal Hicks, but Corporal Hicks is not a total washout in the sense, but he is also struggling in his own way with PTSD from everything that happened. He blames himself in at least in this comic, like he blames himself for the deaths of his troop, there on Archeron, for his fellow soldiers. And he's got the acid on the face, the scarring and stuff. And he's had a hard time reintegrating into society back on Earth. But an opportunity comes up. They locate the alien homeworld. So they've located the alien homeworld, and you get to see glimpses of it. And what's really cool about this particular series, the Outbreak, is you can see some of the seeds of ideas that would later germinate and grow into full-blown plants, so to speak, and bear some fruit. Rather frightening, sometimes ridiculous, but overall interesting fruit in Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and the third as yet to be, well, at least I don't know if it has a name yet or a release date. At some point there might be a third one in the trilogy that Scott's working on. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but you see a lot of the seeds for ideas that would turn into that. And I was just reading some trivia about Alien 3, just to refresh my memory, because I'd heard some of this before. But Scott had been offered the opportunity to direct this, but he wanted to do something similar to what he eventually did with Prometheus, where he would explore the origin of the xenomorph species. And which I don't know which came first, like him putting that idea out there. Did he get it from the comics? Perhaps was he reading these? Did he get the idea from there? Or did they get the idea from him? Don't know. Maybe both of them had it separately. But in the comics, like the aliens, actually, I haven't got far enough to know for sure whether they're genetically engineered. But you see some of the seeds, like there is a species. It seems like thus far, like where I'm at thus far, it seems like they're just a natural species that lives on that planet, and they have other species, some of which are higher on the food chain than they are. And there's this bipedal, sort of like humanoid crustacean, almost like species that we find out was trying to capture, I think, the aliens at some point, and then they experienced death just as the humans did in trying to control and capture these creatures. And I guess quite a few of that species, or at least the people that were on the missions, got killed. And like Newt and Hicks and some of their team are actually in danger of being killed when one of these other aliens steps in and kills the xenomorphs before they can kill Hicks and Newt and a few others that survive. And even though like that alien is doing so for revenge, he still saves the day. He, she, it, they, whatever gender or non-gender that alien species might be, the alien saves the day, killing the xenomorphs. And you see in this, like it's cool to see the differences. Like in this one, how like in the very first Alien film, when we reviewed it, they have that one scene where they come upon the control room in the ship, and you see the ancient astronaut, and you see its head. In this, they basically imply that was the alien's skull, more or less, and he actually has a trunk and stuff in a shape. Whereas once you get to Prometheus, it becomes clear that was just a helmet. And
right.
Once you take it off, he has a head that's more shaped like a human's, very much like humans. And but in this, like they actually, let me see if I can try to put some maybe some pictures up on Instagram. But like they've had some battles with the xenomorphs, and there's also some, like I said, some combative species that are on their planet. But they have a nest, and you find out some more about the queens and just how the species propagates. So you have all this storyline with like Hicks and Newt, but a B plot, if you will, still a very important plot, but I guess you call it a B plot, is also going on along the way. You find out on Earth that as knowledge of the xenomorphs has gotten out, some of it wasn't supposed to get out, but as some people have found out, there have sprung up, and there's this one group in particular, basically a cult that has begun worshiping the xenomorphs, in particular the queen, like the queen xenomorph, and they begin to see her in the species as a sort of messiah, and they want to become one with her by, literally, eventually, within the series, they literally offer their bodies up to be, face hugged, and with the gestation process and all of that. And that is now obviously it's a corporation, kind of the typical, like, this isn't Weyland Yutani, but it's forget the name of the corporate, but it's another evil corporation, more, essentially, that is wanting to profit off of the aliens, using them as a bioweapon. And from what I understand, like, this is similar to something that Alien 3 might have been, like, this is the direction they might have gone with the script, where it's like the aliens on Earth, Sigourney dealing with it there on Earth, as opposed to going back out into space. That was something I think that was discussed, but the script got changed so many times, most of which was at the demand of the studio, as I understand it. That basically got scrapped, more or less, and you have the Prison Planet story instead, which we might cover Alien 3 at some point. But for those who haven't seen it yet, spoiler warning, but it has been 31 years now, so you've had a long time to watch it. No excuses. But anyway, like, you have this subplot B where you have the religious cult, and they infiltrate the evil corp. We'll call him Evil Corp. Mr. Robot reference there for those who have seen Mr. Robot. Excellent series, by the way. We should cover that at some point. But yeah, the evil corporation, has some of the aliens, and they have a human. Now, they did not deliberately infest the human, but they found somebody that had been infested, in a sense, like, and had a face hugger, and they were trying to slow the process enough where they could study what was happening and figure out more about the alien, and figure out eventually how to weaponize it, and then how to sell that weapon with the ultimate goal. But then this cult infiltrates the corporation, and then they end up, I don't know if that was entirely their plan, but they do end up being, and once they get the opportunity, very willingly giving themselves up to be face hugged and to become carriers for the next generation of the xenomorphs. And this then starts, I guess, in a sense, an outbreak on Earth. And so the military then is going around trying to control it before it gets to the rest of the general population, and it keeps spreading. And it obviously, they're having to kill a lot of humans, and they end up doing like mandatory testing for all humans. So you have to get tested to see if you have one of the humans, or if you've been infected with the spores, however that works. Like, and yeah, so things are not going well on Earth, while Hicks and Newt are off, like, on their journey. And for Hicks's part, like, he legit wants to, like he wants to destroy those motherfuckers. Like, he's like, I want to wipe them off the face of their planet so that they can never hurt anybody again, basically. So that's his primary agenda. And the government kind of has a mixed agenda, but then the government ship that he's on gets followed by a evil corp ship, by a guy who's basically a mercenary, and they're trying to, once again, bring more samples back, so that they can create more bioweapons. They're also apparently wanting to see if there's any species that are more powerful than the xenomorphs on their planet, and seeing if they can also somehow abduct them. Very stupid, obviously. And Hicks tries to tell him that, and at the end he sort of begrudgingly goes along, but only on the condition that he can, bomb the shit out of the xenomorphs. Which I'm right about to the part where he does bomb like one of the major nests that they have as he and Newt and some of the other survivors are leaving. So it's just really cool. Like I like, I mean, it's kind of cool to read like an 80s comic for one, some nostalgia there. But then just to see someone else do something with that storyline and bring it forward, and seeing that even some of that, like some of those ideas eventually, again, I don't know which came first, chicken or the egg, but some of those ideas got fleshed out more in Prometheus and Alien Covenant. But you see the seed of those ideas. Again, don't know which came first, but in terms of who came up with it. But either way, like just to see that later in slightly different form, but to come to fruition is pretty cool to see the connections and just to see what someone else did with it, to get to see Newt as a young adult, and see her growth, and then you get to follow up with Hicks as well. And the other movies that came out, like 3 and 4, were so Ripley dominant that it's nice to see a storyline that doesn't have Ripley in it. I'm not bashing Ripley at all. I love Sigourney Weaver as Ripley. She still does a great job, even in 3 and 4. 4, I can't help but imagine that she did that more for the money than anything else, but not pretending to speak for Sigourney. But yeah, that was kind of a debacle from what I've heard. I still have not seen the whole thing. Someday. I don't think. Maybe once. I might have seen it once. Yeah. Maybe we can hate watch 3 and 4 at some point. So anyway, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at so far in the story, and some of the art is gorgeous. Like the art style does not look like your typical, late 80s, early 90s fare. Like I'll show you some of it here.
Nice.
Yeah, like when I first saw it, I thought it was a more modern comic, but then when I looked at the publication dates, I was like, wow, this is late 80s. Like this is different. This is very different than most of the stuff you'd see back at that time. Yeah, I really like it. Like yeah, I haven't gotten to that story yet. But yeah, what I'm reading so far, I'm really enjoying, and props to whichever person or persons is curating the selection there at my Forsyth County Public Library Central Branch. You're doing a great job. So thanks. I've read quite a few really good comics, which I actually picked up some more today. From there, maybe we'll talk about it some future date. But I picked up an X-Files season 11.
Oh, cool.
Comic, which I don't know if that's a retelling of season 11 or like if it, like we've been watching season 11, Laura and I have, so I don't know. And then I picked up which I didn't know there were. It doesn't surprise me that there are, but I didn't know there was Battlestar Galactica graphic novels. But this is
cool.
Volume 1 of the complete omnibus. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Like that's a series. It's one of those that like you get hooked on it, and I really enjoyed watching through it, but it's so dark that I haven't revisited it since I finished it. Because yeah, it's depressing. There's very little hope in that series. Yeah, it's like Ronald D. Moore is like the main writer, producer, showrunner for that. And like Deep Space Nine, who he was one of the main people on that. It definitely had, and Star Trek in general does, but like it had a lot more hopeful tone. Like even through the Dominion War and all of that, there was more hope and even some happiness and humor that peppered in through that. Not that there wasn't any of that in Battlestar Galactica, but yeah, it's a pretty bleak series. And then I don't know if you ever saw any of it when
No.
it was coming out. I recommend it like to sci-fi if you like hard sci-fi, like which a lot of hard sci-fi is kind of bleak and like not quite apocalyptic, but like just like very bleak view of the future and technology and things. Like a lot of hard sci-fi is like that because they're prognosticating some of the worst case scenarios. Where could our tech take us? And good sci-fi often is like both a generator of future tech ideas, but also a harbinger, for what could happen, what evils could happen in the future. And Battlestar Galactica is definitely that. It's definitely like a harbinger of like, hey, if we go too far with our robotics or our AI, it may turn, it's turning against us, kind of like the Terminator idea too, but Battlestar came first. So at least the original did. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. And yeah, I think that's it. Like that's the only comic. Like the Aliens one is the only one I've been reading recently. And yeah, but I have read quite a few good ones that we haven't really talked about on here. Some more independent or like DC Black Label type stuff that is really well done. Yeah, like but no, whether on when I had Kindle Unlimited, I would pick up some. Like I've read through some of the dang it, the Fables series. I don't know if you've read any of that, but it's really well done. It's like as if all the fables were like real in real life. They still had like an alternate world, but kind of like a mythical world within our world, so to speak, and they interact with our world to some extent. But yeah, I've read quite a few of the Fables volumes and a little bit of the newest series by them, Fairest, I think it's called. So I picked up some of those. Those have been more on like Kindle Unlimited or Comixology. But from the library, I've picked up quite a few good and interesting volumes over the past year or so. So yeah, it's kind of cool. Like in part because of both my friendship with you, but also this podcast, I've gotten more into graphic novels and comics over the years because I didn't read them much growing up. So I've enjoyed that. Yeah. So anyway, well, we got about 8 minutes left. Anything else you want to talk about, sir?
I've also been reading a more modern Garfield Fat Cat 3-pack.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what volumes that is. And there's not really much to say about it other than, except for John and Liz finally dating, it's just Garfield. It's the same jokes that have been in the comic strip for decades. So if you like Garfield, it's more the same.
Okay. Yeah, I think I actually, I don't know. It must have been when it was coming out in the newspaper or something. I caught up with a little bit at one point when John and Liz were dating. I was like, it's about time.
Yeah.
But I didn't get too deep into it at that point. Yeah, I wonder if do you know if it ever goes any further, or just they date for a while and then break up?
Well, I don't think they break up. I think they're still dating, but that's a good question. Maybe I can look that up right quick.
Not that it has to go further. I mean, if you don't want to get married, you don't have to get married. But yeah, some people date for years and they like it that way, and that's okay. But it might also be kind of that weird, like, what's the actual timeline? Garfield would obviously be dead by now. If it would have been dead a long time ago if it followed a real timeline. So it's like you suspended animation that comics often live in. It's, like Family Circus. They've been kids for what, 30, 40, 50 years. So obviously, or The Simpsons. Yeah. Speaking of which, still need to do a Simpsons episode.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, we got to figure out. We either got to cover like maybe some of a couple of our favorite episodes from the series, or maybe the movie, maybe the Simpsons movie. Maybe that'd be like an inroad into it. Yeah, that is, guys, one thing for season 4. Just a goal of ours. Like, we're still following the same basic format, in terms of the normal schedule. Like, the topics are following the basic format of sci-fi, comics, anime, then movie of the month. But we are wanting to infuse, like, into those selections more animation, like more, in part because obviously, like, Willie, you've even done a little bit of animation, have you not? Like back in the day when you were in college?
Back when I was in animation college for Sci Tech and the digital effects and animation major.
Yeah, like you dabbled in it just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little.
Back in the day. But obviously you're kind of, what is it called? Animation adjacent, I guess.
Yeah. And according to what I just looked up, Liz and John are still dating in the comic strips. They got married in the live action movie, but the comic strips have them remain dating.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like it would fundamentally change some things if John ever like fully settled down, quote unquote, or just if they decided to get married and then Liz is suddenly living in the house. That would definitely change the dynamic with the comic, I feel like.
It would, but
it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Not necessarily. It just makes room for new material. The same old material can get boring after so many decades.
It's very true. We're going on 45 years now, right?
Yeah,
1978, wasn't it, when it first came out?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, think of it this way: when the Garfield comic strip first started, John Garfield and Odie shared the house with
oh yeah,
John's roommate. I don't even remember John's roommate's name right now. Odie was actually his dog originally.
Mustache dude. Lyman.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that. You're right. Yeah, I remember that now. And Garfield was bigger and much fatter.
Yeah,
in those early iterations. Wow, that's a blast from the past.
Lyman just disappeared like the second daughter on Family Matters, and we just don't need Lyman. He adds nothing to the plot, so boom. There's no plot, but still, boom, gone.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Did they ever attempt to explain? Like, did he just like move out at one point? Did he die? Like, did they ever attempt to explain that? I don't remember.
In a Halloween animated game on the Garfield website, when the characters go into the basement, Lyman is chained up in the basement.
Wow, dark side to John there.
It depends on whether or not you think that's canonical.
not your friendly neighborhood comic book writer, comic book creator. It's got a dark side.
Dark side.
Do you have a dark side, Will? You don't have anyone in your basement, do you?
I don't have a basement.
What about the attic?
Maybe.
That might explain that moaning that I heard last time I was there. It's like, Bart's evil twin up there.
I was just thinking that.
Were you?
Yeah.
Up there in the attic. Treehouse of Horror. Maybe that's what we should cover. We should cover a couple of the Treehouse of Horror episodes. Like those are some of my favorite every season Like, because just to give you a very different take on typical storylines for The Simpsons, and they're kind of fun. Like one of them. Sorry, go ahead.
My favorite was the Shining parody.
Oh, I'm trying to remember how that goes. Like, I'm thinking of the one where Ned Flanders becomes an assassin. Like he's hearing the voice of God tell him to kill people or something. I think he becomes an assassin for the Lord. It's like Ned Flanders.
I did it.
Yeah, the last word you'll overhear.
I did it, neighborino.
Yeah, there's some pretty wild ones. This is one where Lisa basically has a little black hole as a pet. Yeah, she's like sucking things in, like she's trying to protect it. It's like, it's a black hole. Don't hurt it. Oh man, well, we are at an end for this episode. So, nerds, next week we will have an anime theme episode. Yes. Once again, we're running a little behind our scheduling, so we have not chosen the topic yet, but we will do our best to make it something interesting. We've got a lot of different directions we could go and things we've already talked about doing. We just got to narrow it down and be like, we're doing this one this week. So yeah, you'll be hearing from us next Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Irreverent Nerds podcast. If you would, consider following us on Instagram. We are there at irreverent_nerds. You can also hit us up on Facebook. Just look us up there at The Irreverent Nerds. That's our fan page. We have a YouTube channel as well. Once again, The Irreverent Nerds. Nice and simple, right? And if you go to www.irreverentnerds.com, that will send you to our Podcasters for Spotify, formerly Anchor.fm, profile, where you can send us a voice message if you want to, support us financially, or listen to the podcast. It will also direct you to other places you can listen, like Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, you name it. So, like, comment, subscribe, follow, all those good things, wherever you find us, wherever you listen to us, we would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, nerds, live long and prosper. Avengers assemble! I'm Batman.